Good day, everyone. Welcome to another Bible study brought to you by the Assembly of Yahusha. Today, we're going to look into the islands of the sea. Now, growing up a member of the Iglesia ni Cristo, I often remembered again and again and again in my mind, because it was preached numerous times in the pulpit, islands of the sea in the Far East. And so, of course, there's only one island of the sea in the Far East. It can only be the Philippines. And so, because it's the Philippines, well, for the Iglesia ni Cristo, this is like the smoking gun that proves without a shadow of a doubt that the Iglesia ni Cristo is the only true church. But what if the islands of the sea mentioned in the Holy Bible is actually not in the east, but is from the west? Well, this is what we're going to look into in our Bible study today. Now, of course, let's go into the two pillars of INC theology. We talked all about the ends of the earth. It's not really referring to a time, but distant places throughout the world. Now we're going to kind of focus on the islands of the sea and also the Far East theology of the Iglesia ni Cristo. They use two biblical passages, Isaiah 43, 5-6, and Isaiah 24, 15-16. Let's look first at Isaiah 43, 5-6. We read this before many times, but let's read it again. Fear not, for I am with you. I will bring your descendants from the east and gather you from the west. I will say to the north, give them up, and to the south, do not keep them back. Bring my sons from afar and my daughters from the ends of the earth. And so, when they explained this prophecy, Brother Bob Pellin, in one of his programs, What's in the Bible, brought to you by the incmedia.org, well, this is what he says. God in these verses, referring to Isaiah 43, 5-6, already specified the precise place where his sons and daughters would emerge from. How so? He said the Far East, islands of the sea, which describes the Philippines. And so for Robert Pellin, when Isaiah 43, 5-6 mentions east, for him, it is a precise place that the prophecy is specifying the east. And the east is the islands of the sea in the Far East, or the Philippines. This is why for him and for the Iglesia ni Cristo, Isaiah 43, 5-6 is about a work of God, gathering people together in the east. But we did a study concerning this, and we do hope that you'll take the time to watch it if you haven't already done so. And we kind of mentioned in that particular episode about the word that dismantles the theology of the Iglesia ni Cristo, and it's the word from. Because when the Bible mentions east, it says from the east, and the preposition from means to take out from. And so it is about the work of God taking people out from the east. And so if the east is the Philippines, it basically means God is going to take people out from the Philippines so they can be gathered together in Israel, because this prophecy is about Yahuwah's work of gathering the Israelites from all over the farthest reaches of the world and gathering them in Israel. And so you cannot say it is a specific place. The term east tells us it is a generic place. Just like north and south and west, it's a generic place referring to a direction, because the regathering will come from all over the world. So it's not speaking about a specific, precise place. And then he goes on to say islands of the sea. But in actuality, you do not read islands of the sea in Isaiah 43, 5-6. You can read east, and you can read Far East in some translations of the Holy Bible, but there's no mention of islands of the sea. The term Far East in Isaiah 43, 5-6 does not pertain to the Philippine Islands. And so what they refer to and connect to Isaiah 43, 5-6, so that they can create this narrative of God working his working on bringing together people from the Far East and the islands of the sea, which is the Philippines, according to them. Well, to have this narrative, they have to connect now Isaiah 24, 15-16. So this is what he has to say. Again, in that same program, he says, as we have also studied, it is our faith as members of the Church of Christ that this prophetic place called East here is actually the Far East. Well, due to how it's recorded in Isaiah 43:4 in the Moffat translation of the Bible, and in a country composed of many islands, as was recorded by the prophet Isaiah in chapter 24, verses 15 and 16. And so he connects Isaiah 24:15 to 16 to the Far East in Isaiah 43:4 Moffat translation. And so now you have this phrase, islands of the sea in the Far East. And when you have that phrase, islands of the sea in the Far East, it does kind of sound like the Philippines, does it not? But why do you make that connection? And what does islands of the sea in Isaiah 24:15 to 16 actually means? And so let's look at Isaiah 24:15 to 16. Take note, he quotes from the NIV translation, and the reason is pretty obvious. We'll show that to you later. Isaiah 24:15 to 16 in NIV, therefore in the east give glory to Yahweh, exalt the name of Yahweh, the God of Israel. In the islands of the sea, from the ends of the earth, we hear singing glory to the righteous one. And so that's Isaiah 24:15 to 16. In this prophecy, it does mention east. Do you see it? It says in the east. It also mentions islands of the sea. Do you see it? And so what the Iglesia Ni Cristo will do is they're going to connect islands of the sea and in the east to form one phrase, islands of the sea in the east, which to them means the Philippines. However, we're going to tell you right now, the phrase islands of the sea is not referring to the Philippines. Let's take a look at this passage step by step, and we're going to show you why it's not the case at all. And so let's first take a look at the term islands, because for us Westerners who do not really understand Hebrew lexicon, whenever we come across the word island, what comes to our mind? It is a land or body, a piece of land surrounded by water. This is our English definition of islands. But in Hebrew, the word island can mean several things. It can mean coastland, habitable spot, or dry land. It's not limited to our idea of island where you have a body, a land body or a landmass surrounded by water. So the term island in Hebrew does not require a piece of land to be completely surrounded by water. Lexically, meaning according to the Hebrew definition of island, it may designate a coastal region like coastlands, a maritime country, particularly one approached from the sea. And so it's land that is associated with what people do by the sea. Okay, that's what's referred to as islands. It is broader than our idea of island, which is a piece of land surrounded by water. So according to dictionaries, for example, the Easton Dictionary of the Bible, island refers to dry land as opposed to water. Frequently, it simply denotes a maritime region or seacoast. And so you have Israel, and it's bordered by the Mediterranean Sea. And so all of that can be termed island. Again, from the Smith Bible's dictionary, it refers to habitable places as opposed to water. You cannot live on water. But if you have a landmass that is habitable, then you can live there. It's called an island. Okay, so if it's a habitable place as opposed to water, it's called an island. In another dictionary, the New Bible Dictionary, it refers to coastlands. In fact, they say it's a better translation when you translate it as coastland, because it also conveys the idea of distance. And so when you look at other translations other than the NIV, you have the following examples. New King James says coastlands of the sea. You see that? The ESV says coastlands of the sea. The RSV says coastlands of the sea. NLT says the lands beyond the sea. And so the phrase islands of the sea is more accurately translated in the coastlands of the sea or in the maritime regions. And when you read specifically the book of Isaiah, the term islands normally means more than small literal islands. It refers broadly to shorelands, maritime territories, and distant peoples reached across the sea. And so that's what islands refer to. Well, can it pertain to the Philippine Islands? I mean, when you look at the lexicon, it can, because the Philippines is composed of islands, right? So it can refer to the Philippines. But if we look specifically at Isaiah 24, 15, and 16, it does not refer to the Philippines islands at all. Why? Well, let's go back to Isaiah 24, 15, and 16. It says here, in the east and islands of the sea. What the Iglesia Ni Cristo will do is connect it together. And so they have this one gigantic phrase, islands of the sea in the east. Connect Isaiah 43:4 in the Moffat. What do you get? Islands of the sea in the far east. But what we have in Isaiah 24, 15 to 16 is this passage. You can read it. Take note, it does not say islands of the sea in the east. It does not say that. In fact, the islands we know cannot be from the east. Why do we say this? Because it says islands of the sea. The islands are not in the east. The islands are of the sea. Well, brother, what does that mean? It's of the sea. Well, when we look at the Hebrew word for the word sea, it is the word yam. And when you look up the lexicon for yam, take a look at what it says. It says Mediterranean Sea. And it has different meanings. It can also refer to the Red Sea, the Dead Sea, the Sea of Galilee. And look at number 8. It can also be a direction, west. Isn't that interesting? Or westward. Isn't that interesting? But primarily, when the readers of the book of Isaiah read Isaiah, they understood the sea to refer to the Mediterranean Sea. I want you to look at the note. Under Strong's definition, it says specifically with the article, the Mediterranean Sea. And so that article, the, is very important. Do you know what a definite article is? A definite article gives us a specific noun instead of a general noun. So for example, when you say mountain ranges, it can be any mountain range throughout the world. But when you say the mountain ranges, it is specifying a specific or unique set of mountain ranges. So the word the gives us a uniqueness about what you're referring to. It's not general, it's specific. And so when you read yam, which means sea, if it has a definite article in front of it, it's referring to what? The Mediterranean Sea. And so to specify the term the, or the definite article the, in Hebrew, it uses the he, pronounced ha, when you connect it to a word. Again, it's used as a prefix. And so if you find this he in front of this Hebrew word, it means it is a definite article. And so it's attached as a prefix to begin that noun. And so let's go back to the phrase islands of the sea, and let's take a look at what's in front of the term sea. Now I want you to look at yam. Yam means sea, but how it's used in Isaiah 24, 15, 16 is you can see the he in front of it. You see it? The one I circled with red, that is the definite article. Because it has the definite article, when we read this passage, we actually read it as islands of the sea, not just islands of any sea, but the sea. And the sea is not the Pacific Ocean, or is not any other sea. It's not in the Philippines. The sea refers to the Mediterranean Sea. This is why the phrase islands of the sea in Isaiah 25:15 has the definite article. That being the case, it really means islands in the Mediterranean Sea. And so for Isaiah and ancient Israel, the sea, with the definite article the, it meant Mediterranean Sea, the western boundary of their known world. And so for the people during the time of Isaiah, they lived in Israel. Westward, you have what? The Mediterranean Sea. Of course, you're going to have to take ships to explore that part of the world. And so that part that needs to be explored, if you find habitable lands, it's called an island. And so the islands, the coastlands west of Israel is referred to as the islands of the sea. And so it can also refer to a direction, westward, westward of Israel. And so when we go back to Isaiah 24, 15 and 16, islands of the sea is not in the east. It is of the sea, because it has the definite article. The sea is the Mediterranean Sea. So it's islands of the Mediterranean Sea. Here's a map of the Mediterranean Sea. You see Israel. Israel is at the bottom, circled in red. And so if you go westward, you have the Mediterranean Sea. Take a look at the Mediterranean Sea. What do you find? You have coastlands. You have islands. You have maritime regions. That's what's referred to as the islands of the Mediterranean Sea. And so when you go westward, right, it can also now refer to as a direction. And so one of the definitions of the term yam is west or westward, which means islands of the sea is actually islands of the west, not the east. And so in Isaiah 24, 15 and 16, when it mentions islands, it's not referring to islands of the east, but islands of the west. So in other translations of Isaiah 24, 15, you find this: wherefore glorify Yahweh in the east, whether in the region of daybreak's lights and fires or in the west, glorify the name of Yahweh, the God of Israel, in the isles and coasts of the Mediterranean Sea. Another translation, the Darby translation, it says, therefore glorify Yahweh in the east, the name of Yahweh, the God of Israel, in the isles of the west. From the end of the earth, we have heard songs, glory to the righteous. Do you see how other translators translate Isaiah 24, 15 and 16? They translate it more accurately because they understand the meaning of islands of the sea. Islands of the sea refers to islands of the Mediterranean Sea, which means it is the west. It's speaking of habitable lands that is west of Israel. And so in Isaiah 24, 15 and 16, concerning the command to glorify Yahweh, it's going to be from the east and also from the west. And so when you have east and west together like that, it's what the Hebrews called a merism. It's a Hebrew poetic device called merism, which is the use of opposite extremes to express totality. So for example, when we say from top to bottom, what are we saying? It's not just the top, it's not just the bottom, but everything in between, okay? And so when it says east and west, it's not just the east, it's not just the west, it's everything in between. It's called a merism. And so when you look at Isaiah 24, 15 and 16, east and west are mentioned as a merism, which means the islands are in fact from the west. And the other direction is the east. So you have the east and west merism. And this east and west merism is extended to include the ends of the earth. And so we know Isaiah 24, 15 to 16, when it says islands of the sea, it's not in the far east. It's in the west. But what further proves that the islands of the sea are from the west and not from the east? Well, let's go back to Isaiah 43, 5 to 6, because it's the favorite passage of the Iglesia de Cristo. And so we have here Isaiah 43, 5 to 6. It actually has a parallel passage. Did you know that? And in this parallel passage, it gives us some information that's not found in Isaiah 43, 5 to 6. It's like the Gospels, in the Gospels, where you have Matthew, Mark, and Luke, and you have parallel passages, and one passage gives more detail than the other, and one passage gives an explanation that's not found in one, right? And so the same thing with Isaiah. And so Isaiah 43, 5 to 6 is like, it gives you a more generic, a general type of prophecy, but it also has a parallel which gives you more specifics, and that's found in Isaiah 11, 11 to 12. So these are parallel prophecies, and the reason why I say that is because it has corresponding parts that match. For example, where in Isaiah 43, 5 to 6, it says, I will bring, I will gather, I will bring. In Isaiah 11, it's using the terms he set his hand again to recover, will assemble, will gather together. Do you see the similarities? It's a parallel passage. It's about God's work of bringing, assembling, gathering, okay? It also mentions Isaiah 43:5, the descendants. We know the descendants refers to the physical descendants of Israel, right? These are the sons and daughters of God. And when you look at Isaiah, it mentions Israel, it mentions Judah, the assembling, the gathering of the outcasts of Israel and the dispersed of Judah. You see why it's connected? Okay, so we have the gathering, the bringing together of physical descendants of Israel. And where are they going to be gathered from? Isaiah 43:5-6 says, ends of the earth. Isaiah 11 tells us the meaning of ends of the earth, the four corners of the earth, the north, the south, the east, and the west, which are the four different directions. And it's the farthest places in those directions. This is where the gathering in Isaiah 43:5-6 will take place. It's also mentioned in Isaiah 11:11-12. What is beautiful about Isaiah 11:11-12 is it gives us specific nations that are found in these different directions. It doesn't mean these are the totality of the nations, because it tells us from the ends of the earth, so it can go farther than these nations. But initially, the Bible tells us it gives us a sampling. It gives us a specific list of nations that come from these four different directions. Do you see it? And so when you look at the east, for example, right? Assyria, Elam, and Shinar, these are east of Israel. And when you look at the north, you got Hamath, which is north of Israel. When you look at the south, you got Egypt, Pathros, and Cush. These are the south. This is south of Israel. So far we have east, we have north, we have south. We also have west, islands of the sea. The term islands of the sea in Isaiah 11:11-12 is the exact phrase found in Isaiah 24:15-16. And because it's the exact phrase, it fits the definition of islands of the sea, meaning islands, coastlands, maritime areas west of Israel. Because when the Bible gives us direction, the reference point is always Israel. And so we can look at it graphically in Isaiah 11 from Hamath, north, Egypt, Pathros, and Cush, south, right? We have Assyria, Shinar, and Elam, east. And then you have west, which is in the Mediterranean Sea. And so when Mr. Robert Colleen here mentions Isaiah 24:15-16, now you know the answer, right? So if you let him read Isaiah 24:15-16, all you need to do to kind of destroy this argument is tell him, Robert Colleen, islands of the sea is not in the east. Or is it? It's of the sea. Well, what is the sea? Mediterranean Sea, which is where? Westward. This is one of the definitions of sea is west, which means the islands, it's not in the east, it's where? The west. There goes the Iglesia Ni Cristo doctrine of islands of the sea in the far east. It's islands of the sea in the Mediterranean Sea, islands of the sea in the west. Definitely not the Philippine Islands. Well, we hope that you enjoyed this Bible study presentation and that you will continue to join us in our future Bible study episodes. We are the Assembly of Yahusha. You can find us at Facebook, YouTube, and Spotify. May Yahweh Abba and Yahusha HaMashiach bless all of us.